Part 260. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2596. Manbao was lying on the pillow with her legs crossed, her toes moving. She was still thinking about the anthropomorphic model in the classroom who was constantly dying, and said indifferently, Zheng Erlang's injury is much better, I touched it today. When I touched his head, I found that the bones were already growing. Although he still refused to speak in front of people, I checked his control of his right hand. Now he has written well, not as heavy as before. One stroke can't be grasped, so I think his aphasia can be cured over time. The Kizhu land case is a matter of your Zhongsha province and the various ministries, and has little to do with our Taiyuan hospital. Manbao put his hands behind his head and said leisurely, I thought about it carefully today. This kind of thing is too nerve-wracking an energy. I will see when the story is heard, or not to be too curious. Bai Shan spread out the quilt in half, patted her feet and motioned her to lie in, and asked, why do you suddenly feel this way? Manbao moved in, gave him the quilt to make the bed, looked at the mosquito net and sighed, I found out, if you are too curious, someone will use your curiosity to trick you, such as the county magistrate Guo. She hummed, today, the county magistrate Guo has greatly satisfied my curiosity, but I'm not very good-hearted, so I decided to keep my ears up and listen to the story in the future, and I won't take the initiative to ask these things that have nothing to do with our hospital. Something happened. Bai Shan smiled and asked, can you hold back? Manbao took a deep breath and said, I will work hard. It's really hard to control your curiosity. Bai Shan folded a part of the quilt, drove the mosquitoes out of the mosquito net, and added a piece of spice to the incense burner to light it before he went to bed. He lay side by side with Manbao, nodded and said, yes, it's time to control your curiosity. Manbao asked him curiously, then have you taken the initiative to ask them something? No, Bai Shan said, I was a little worried about you when the matter first came out, so I went to the Ministry of Household and took the initiative to inquire about some things. Later, I found out that the matter involved aristocratic families and land occupation, so I stopped. People have talked about it before. Unless the emperor asks. However, for such a major event, the emperor will not ask the government for a few of them for the time being. Manbao swayed his feet and sighed, my parents, they should be going home now, right? After counting the days, Bai Shan said, if it doesn't rain on the road, I should be able to arrive tomorrow afternoon. If it rains, I guess I have to wait for another 2 days. After the end of the spring planting here, it rained for a few days, so old Zhutu and MRSGN packed up their things and went back to Qilai village with Mr. Bai and his wife. At that time, Manbao was still rescuing Zheng Erlang in the palace, but he could not go out of the palace to see them off. I don't know how the eldest sister is pregnant this time, Manbao said sadly, it's really not free to be an official, and I don't know when we can go back to Qilai village. Bai Shandao, then it is estimated that we have to wait for us to release it, and it has to be a position where we are not in a hurry to take office. Manbao's eyes brightened, and he began to think, what leave should we ask to go back? The marriage leave has already been taken, and I can't wait for me to have a baby before I can go back, right? Bai Shan said quickly, no, there is still family leave. Bai Shan calculated and said, Mianzhou is thousands of miles away, officials can take 25 days off in 3 years, but... Bai Shan turned his head to look at Manbao and said, father-in-law and mother-in-law have been living with you in the capital for the past few years, so this fake official may not approve. Only when his parents are far away from his hometown, the Ministry of Personnel will calculate the relative leave based on the distance of the official from his home. Moreover, Zhou Man has a holiday, but Bai Shan does not. He has not been an official for 3 years. Bai Shan rubbed his chin and thought, maybe try to go through the back door. Manbao immediately turned to look at him, his eyes sparkling, whose back door are you going through? Of course it belongs to His Majesty, but who else could it belong to? Bai Shan said, a matter like the holidays is just a matter of His Majesty's words. Just wait, I will talk to His Majesty when I find the right time. Man Bao, we have to find him when he is in a good mood. Bai Shan nodded, I know, he's not in a good mood recently. There's probably still some trouble with this case. I don't think he's in a good mood in the first half of the year. Bai Shan is right, although other people's melons are delicious, but when he eats them, he finds that he is the one who suffers all the time. How can the emperor's mood be better? The more information sent to Kishu's censor desk and Xingbu Dali temple, the more information they sent back, the worse the emperor's mood became. When he got to the queen's palace, he kicked out all the palace servants and courtiers, and then got angry with the queen. It's really a lucky beetle of the country, every good piece of land in Kishu was taken away by them. The ministry was stretched thin, and they wanted to buy farmland, they had to endure when the money was not enough, but they sold it to those people at a price less than 1/3 of the Ministry of Household's price. What is this? The queen poured him tea, let him drink it to calm down, and asked, what did they say, Lord Wei? What else can I say? The emperor said, naturally, I checked it down. It's good to find evidence, and I can take back part of the fields. If I can't find evidence, I can only eat this dumb loss. He took a deep breath and said, I am really puzzled. Like these 5 surnames and 7 Wang, they have already made no contribution to the country and the people. Why do officials in the DPRK and people in the world still respect them? If it weren't for that, he wouldn't be tied down. The queen said, don't your majesty and the late emperor also claim that they are from the Li clan in Longzi? Emperor. The queen said, everyone in the world is the same. They yearn for their ancestors to be prominent, they yearn for their own background, and they also yearn for making friends with such prominent people. The emperor frowned and sighed after a while, I know that these noble families have accumulated hundreds of thousands of years, and even our royal family is far behind. What the world yearns for is actually the strength behind them. Unless they are destroyed. Power, otherwise this humility, this obedience will not disappear. The queen asked softly, then your majesty wants to destroy their power? The emperor was silent for a moment and then shook his head, no, I don't want to fight with them. If you fight, you will only lose both sides, and the world will not be stable for a long time. The old wounds on my body are still there, how can I let the people of the world get involved in the war again? The queen breathed a sigh of relief and nodded again and again. The emperor said, let's leave it to the prince, or even the descendant of the emperor. He said, when the country becomes strong, the emperor will have more right to speak. Zitong, it is impossible for me to see all of this. You can only watch it. You have to watch it carefully. He has to die to pass the throne to the prince, but the queen mother can exist. The emperor planned and whispered to the queen, you should write down this matter first, and tell the prince when I die. Queen, don't talk nonsense. Also, you asked me to tell the prince too much, and the concubine almost forgot to remember. Then take a small notebook and memorize it. These are my last words and must be remembered. See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2597. After the emperor and the queen finished talking, and their tempers were released, they squeezed out a smile as usual and went to court the next day. It was not the day of the great court meeting, so Man Bao happily went to the Thai hospital. There was nothing at the Thai hospital today, so she went to Chongquen Museum to repair books. The Imperial Physician's office has been restructured, and more students will be admitted this year. There are also many local doctors who come to study here. Well, the main reason is that they are still young and still within the scope of enrollment. Xiao Yuan is subdividing the courses in the Imperial Physician office, so the courses to be taught and the required medical books are also more detailed. Imperial Physician Lu and the others are fine. They don't have official positions. They teach medical books when they get them. Man Bao can't. As the editor of the Chongqing Museum, and she is mainly responsible for the compilation of medical books, she must take into account the teaching resources of the Imperial Medical Office. Xiao Yuanzheng also likes to ask her for medical books. With this salary, Man Bao can't slack off. In fact, Man Bao especially wanted to give the emperor a suggestion, and give Xiao Yuanzheng and Imperial Physician Lu a part-time editor. It's a pity that she knows that a large-scale reward is impossible, so she can only think about it in her heart. Man Bao took out several of the medical books that Zhou Liru and the others had copied during this period of time, and then listed the outline, intending to summarize and plan the content, and then compile the knowledge of these medical books and print them into volumes for the students to read. Just as he was excited, an editor shouted from outside, "Zhou editor, someone is looking for you." Man Bao said without raising his head, "Please come in." Man Bao wrote all of this page before raising his head, seeing Zhou Liru and a few, slightly stunned. "How did you find it?" Zhou Liru whispered, "Teacher, this is the medical book you asked us to copy, and we have all copied it." Man Bao put down the pen, reached out to take it, and praised, "Well done," then continued to copy. No more. Zhou Liru was still a little aggrieved when he said this. When Man Bao heard this, he frowned. "Didn't I ask Imperial Physician Zheng to get it for you?" Zhou Liru immediately said, "Yes, Imperial Physician Zheng also went there in the morning, but the Hanlin Academy didn't take it, saying that Mr. Zheng's injury has stabilized, and the Imperial Academy is no longer open to our Imperial Hospital. So Imperial Physician Zheng can't get the books back, and the copies we copied have been asked to go back." Man Bao stared. She still has several books that she hasn't borrowed, especially some materia medica. There are a few books with editions, and the Chongqing Museum and the outside medical books lack those editions. How can they not lend them? Man Bao stood up immediately. "Is that what the Hanlin Academy said?" "Yes." Man Bao pursed his lips, and immediately went to the Hanlin Academy. Halfway through, he felt that it was not enough, so he turned to look for Bai Shan. "Hanlin Academy doesn't lend you medical books anymore." Man Bao nodded, holding back his anger. "This medical book is not any other book. It cures diseases and saves people, and builds a 7-level Buddha." "Why don't they agree?" Bai Shan asked. "Have you damaged and polluted books?" "Are we that kind of people?" Man Bao said. "It's just to prevent them from making this excuse. I told them early in the morning not to contaminate the books. Imperial Physician Zheng and the others also checked them when they returned, and there were no problems with the books at all." Bai Shan thought for a while and said, "I'm still on duty, and I can't go with you to the Hanlin Academy. You have to wait for me to change shifts after noon, and I'll go with you then." Man Bao nodded, then glanced at the main hall quietly, and asked, "How is your Majesty feeling today?" Bai Shan asked, "Do you want to beg your Majesty?" Man Bao, "I want His Majesty to directly order me to lend out all the medical books." Bai Shan thought thoughtfully, "You don't need to ask His Majesty for such a trivial matter, just ask His Royal Highness." He said, "Wait for me to accompany you in the afternoon. If you can't borrow it, go to ask His Royal Highness the Prince, and borrow it on the grounds that you want to cultivate." Edit. Bai Shan nodded. Hanlin Academy and Chongqing Museum repair books. Borrowing books from each other is a common thing. Now that Mr. Zheng's injury has stabilized, it is not enough to borrow books on this excuse, and he looked at Man Bao and said with a smile, "How many of the medical books you borrowed really relate to Mr. Zheng's injury?" "I'm afraid there are quite a few people in the Hanlin Academy who have opinions." Man Bao hummed, "But this is a medical book, neither a military book, nor a book involving some secrets. What can be kept secret?" When Gu Zhong came out, he saw the young couple hiding behind the hall and muttering. Because of the angle, they didn't see him, but he listened a lot hearing Zhou Man's complaint. Gu Zhong smiled. turned back to the hall. The emperor was taking a break and rubbed his forehead with his hand. Seeing Gu Zhong coming back alone, he said, "Didn't I ask you to find Bai Shan to read to me?" Gu Zhong smiled and said, "The imperial physician Zhou is outside. The husband and wife are talking. It's not good for the younger ones to disturb them." "What is Zhou Manlai doing?" The emperor became curious. "Is it possible that you miss the king if you don't see him for a long time?" "Not really." Zhou Man was still locked in Huangzhuang for 10 days and a half months. Gu Zhong said with a smile, "Emperor Zhou was wronged and came to see Lord Bai for help." "Oh," the emperor became more interested, no longer had a headache, and asked enthusiastically, "Why is she wronged?" Gu Zhong tilted his head and thought for a while, "It's far away, I can't hear it very clearly. It seems that the Hanlin Academy has stopped lending medical books to Lord Zhou. Lord Zhou is very angry, so he came to Lord Bai for help." The emperor laughed loudly, but his face became solemn after the fun. "Why does the Hanlin Academy hold medical books and not give it to Zhou Man?" Gu Zhong smiled and said, "It's probably because Mr. Zheng's injury is stable. Isn't His Majesty's handwriting to Lord Zhou just for Mr. Zheng's injury? But doctors can't look for medical books every time they have intractable diseases, right?" The emperor snorted coldly, "Medical books are nothing else, and the Hanlin Academy should not be so controlled." Gu Zhong lowered his head and did not express his opinion on this matter. The emperor knocked on the table and took the matter in his mind, but Bai Shan didn't speak, so he didn't say anything, watching the young couple toss. Bai Shan came back to study for the emperor, and the two of them talked again. When it was noon, the emperor went to have lunch and a lunch break, and Bai Shan also went to have a working lunch, and then used the rest time to go to find Manbao, and went to Hanlin together. Hospital. The Hanlin Academy also followed the rules, and of course refused to give it. So Bai Shan could only take Manbao to Zanshifu to find the prince. The crown prince was also busy, so he heard the two start and asked, "So which medical books do you want?" This Manbao had done her homework. Before, she and Bai Shan and Bai Erlang went through the book catalogues of the two buildings in the Hanlin Academy, and wrote down the medical books that Manbao had not read, minus the amount of time she had borrowed. Of those who came out to transcribe, there were only 19 copies left, not many. Manbao directly gave the list to the prince. The prince glanced at it, took a pen and wrote them a piece of paper, stamped it with his official seal, and handed it to Bai Shandao, "Go to Zanshifu to get another one, and take it to the Hanlin Academy to get the book." Manbao and Bai Shan were both overjoyed, and Bai Shan respectfully presented the book list. "Your Highness, why don't you put a stamp on this too?" "Prince." He glared at the two of them secretly, and still put a cover on the book list for them. The two left happily, and went to the front to find Guo Zhenqi to seal. "See you tomorrow. There are too many things to do today, I haven't added more, and I will update 2 chapters earlier tomorrow." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2598. Bai Erlang happily took the list and led the two to find the book. Because of the heat, he used the list to win the wind and entered the library. Only when there were 3 of them did he gloat over the misfortune. "Let them target us, now you don't have to lend us the book, you have to borrow it all at once." Manbao said to him, "Anyway, you are also a member of the Hanlin Academy, why can't you use any strength?" "Bai Erlang, I'm a humble person, what can I do if I can't speak?" He pointed at Bai Shan and said, "He still worked in the Hanlin Academy for a year, but didn't he still have a cup of tea?" Bai Shan glanced at him and said to Manbao, "Quickly find the book and lend it out quickly. Now they haven't reacted. When they react, they will have other excuses not to lend us." "Manbao, we have the prince's handwriting." If the Hanlin Academy also needs these medical books to compile things, then it must give priority to the Hanlin Academy. That's why they were fast and rushed over with the handwritten manuscripts. Some people in the Hanlin Academy have not yet received the news. The three of them worked together, and there was another person who used to be from the Hanlin Academy, and one who was currently helping the Hanlin, especially by ER. When Imperial Physician Zheng came to borrow medical books this morning, he had already found 10 medical books and was waiting for someone to borrow them. It turned out that Hanlin, who was in charge of the 2 bookstores, did not lend them any more. He could only put the book back in again. At this point, it is very fast to take it out. Bai Shan smiled while looking for the remaining books. Actually, there is another way. Your reading speed and time are limited. Anyway, Bai Er is fine. If there are books that you want to borrow in the future, if you can't borrow them, just let them. He copied it out for you. Man Bao's eyes brightened, thinking that this method was very good, so he looked at Bai Erlang with bright eyes. Bai Erlang was so frightened that he took 2 steps back and waved his hands again and again. No, no, Bai Shan, how could you hurt me like this? I still have a lot of things to do. What are you doing? It's been a while since you wrote the Westward Journey. 2 days ago, I went to the bookstore to find books, and the bookstore's shopkeeper took me and talked for a long time. Bai Erlang opened his mouth and said nothing. Bai Shan and Man Bao couldn't help but become curious, and they stopped looking for the book, and walked around to him and stared at him curiously. What are you doing? When Bai Erlang saw their faces, you're in trouble again, he couldn't help but say depressedly, what can I do? Naturally, in the Hanlin Academy, I read books to find information. Bai Shan asked, what book is Hanlin, who you've been following recently, studying? Nangshu, Bai Erlang said, I will be responsible for finding the calendar of the past years, as well as the chronicles of natural disasters that have occurred in various places in the past years. It shouldn't be very busy. Bai Shan looked at him even more suspiciously. Okay, don't look at me like that, Bai Erlang said, that's right, I recently found 2 very good-looking miscellaneous notes in the Zishalo. Bai Erlang sighed, Mingda also likes to read it, but the books of the Hanlin Academy can't be taken out privately, and the books in the miscellaneous book building can't be transcribed, so I can only memorize them and write them down for Mingda to read. So he's been very busy lately, okay. Bai Shan, people enter the Hanlin Academy to cultivate books, read books, and accumulate political capital, but as a result, you read miscellaneous books and silently write unofficial stories to please your wife. The 2 of them gave him a deep look, turned around and left. There are 5 more books, hurry up and find them. Bai Erlang immediately said, I know where the origin of diseases you are looking for is. I seem to have glanced at it when I was looking for the book in the morning, but I remember you said that this book was written by someone from the previous dynasty. Xiao the hospital has an incomplete copy in his hand, so don't rush to get it. Bai Erlang said this and found it, and happily took it down and handed it to Man Bao. The booklet may not have been well kept when it was put into the library, so it was a little scattered. For so many years, the Hanlin Academy did not think about repairing it, so Man Bao carefully flipped through it so that the pages would not be scattered. She put away the books, and found one by herself, while Bai Shan found the remaining 3. So the 3 of them went down with the book and registered to lend it. When Han Lin, who was in charge of the library, saw the book that the 3 of them had taken down, he couldn't help but say to Zhou Man, your Chongguan Museum has borrowed too much at one time. Have you read so much? I want them to be borrowed separately. Man Bao raised the list with the seal of the prince in Yang's hand and said, His Royal Highness agreed. The Imperial Physician's office is in urgent need of writing medical books. These medical books are urgently needed. Hanlin glanced at Bai Shan and Bai Erlang, and silently spread out the booklet to record them, humming in his heart, Bai Shan is fine, he and Zhou Man are husband and wife after all, but what's the matter with Bai Erlang? After all, you are the current Hanlin, and it's no wonder that everyone doesn't like to play with him very much. Bai Erlang didn't feel excluded at all. He was busy, looking for materials, reading books, copying books, writing books, and occasionally going to banquets with relatives and friends, and he was about to die. The people in the Hanlin Academy didn't play with him, he didn't have much entertainment, he had more time, and it was too late to be happy. He has a big backstage, and even if everyone doesn't play with him, no one in the Hanlin Academy dares to bully him. Hanlin slowly recorded them for them, then handed the pen to Jo Man and asked her to sign one by one. Man Bao took the pen, but Bai Shan held down the booklet, checked the contents against the book, and picked out a few for Hanlin to fill in. This book has already been loose, and I have only counted it. 13 pages, and write down this situation. This one is stained. Between the 8th and 9th pages, 1/5 of the pages are stained, and they are jet black. Hanlin's face twitched, and he smiled insincerely. Master Bai is really careful. Bai Shan smiled at him gently and said, Chen Hanlin is polite, he has also worked as a Hanlin, and he knows that the books that go in and out of the library should be memorized, otherwise, if there is a problem when returning it, it will be difficult to deal with. Hanlin wrote down one by one according to what Bai Shan said, and Man Bao did not sign until they left with the book in hand, and the person Hanlin wanted to wait for didn't show up. He turned to look at the office area with some doubts. Bai Erlang only sent the person to the door. When he saw the person leaving, he raised his head and came back. Seeing that Hanlin squinted at the person, he continued to walk away with his chin raised. Hanlin. If he wasn't the concubine, he would definitely spray him to death. No, it would be useless if he was the concubine, if he wasn't the concubine. Hanlin Zhang Yuan shook his head, closed the window and turned to sit back in the chair. A Hanlin came in and reported, Zhang Yuan, Master Zhou and Master Bai are gone. The Hanlin Academy nodded and said, I see that everyone has been so busy lately that a lot of things have happened. If this is the case, it is better to organize a few Hanlins to go to the Ministry of Engineering to write books on geography. Didn't you say that you want to dredge the Yellow River, but there is no very good way? Send a few Hanlin to the Ministry of Engineering to help, look for information together, and if necessary, go to the field to have a look and do something practical. I have prepared the list, you can take a look. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2599. He stretched out his hand to take a look. Two of them were Hanlins who were very good at skills and had a certain understanding of water conservancy projects. The remaining three were people who were deliberately stuck with Jo Man's medical books this time and refused to lend them. He was silent for a moment, and couldn't help but say, Master Chief, although their actions are inappropriate, they are still doing things according to the rules. All medical books are borrowed. What's more, Zheng Erlang's injury has already stabilized, so this warrant naturally lost its effectiveness. The headmaster said, rules are changeable, and legal principles are nothing more than human feelings, not to mention such trivial matters. He said, medical books are not other books. As long as they love them, they should borrow them. Besides, Jo Man's medical skills are known to the world. If these books remain in our Hanlin Academy, they are only one volume among thousands of books. In Jo Man's hands, that is the real treasure. The head court lifted his eyelids and glanced at his confidant, then shook his head slightly and said, it's just because I'm jealous of Bai Shan, I can't bear to embarrass another innocent person for convenience, and I can't think of the big picture. It's not only short-sighted, but also has a flawed character. When Hanlin heard this, he couldn't help lowering his head and asked, are you trying to teach them a lesson? Zhang Yuan shook his head slightly, nodded again, and said, this is a lesson for them and an opportunity for them. He said, Bai Shan is now a Zhongsha Sharan. Among the 6 Sharan, he spends the most time with His Majesty, studying, playing chess, and inquiring about politics. His Majesty calls him the most. Do not know. Even if your Majesty doesn't know, the courtiers around him will always mention that Zhou Man has a detached position in the palace. Don't underestimate these courtiers, they don't have the right to participate in politics, but there are some things that they can do more conveniently than us. Already. The head court said coldly, this matter is not a big deal, but when it reaches His Majesty's ears, he won't like them too much. The purpose of transferring them out at this time is to hone them, and also to keep them out of His Majesty's eyes. Not in front of His Majesty, he will forget about it in 3 or 5 months. The emperor was dealing with all kinds of opportunities, and he remembered it at this time, but if he couldn't find anyone, he would forget it after a while. Humph, the emperor only brought the imperial physician's office to the front of the people. It was when he favored Xiao Zizan. At this time, he was fighting against the imperial physician's office. Man Bao happily took the book back to the Taiyuan hospital, and then distributed it to Zhou Liru to continue copying. Some books are defaced, please be careful, and ask me if there are words that you can't read clearly. Everyone should go down together. Man Bao said, come on, this is the last batch. When you go back, you should send a copy of the copied books back to the imperial physician's office for the students in the office to check. Everyone should get down. Man Bao then left with his hands behind his back, and continued to go back to the Chongguan Museum to repair her book. This incident didn't even alarm Xiao Yuanzheng. If imperial physician Zheng complained to Xiao Yuanzheng later, he wouldn't even know about it. And the emperor was disappointed when he heard that the prince came forward to deal with this matter, so he kept looking at Bai Shan all afternoon. Bai Shan faced the big boss's gaze, bit his head and bowed his head and sat on his knees, completely unaware of what happened. Seeing that the emperor went to see Bai Shan again, Wei Ji couldn't help it. He simply called Bai Shan's name and asked him, what do people think about Bai Shi? Bai Shan could only get up and reply, the lower official thought that this system should be abolished. He said, the imperial court initially allowed the local yamen to sell their own land. First, because the public treasury was empty and the national treasury had no money, buying and selling land could support the local finances, but now the country is prosperous and the people are safe, and no matter how poor a county yamen is, it will not even be a subordinate official. The salary cannot be issued, so this article can be cancelled. Wei Ji nodded slightly, he thought so too. This system is obviously not in line with the present. Your Majesty, what Bai Shiren said is right. Now the most important thing is to ensure that the land in the hands of the court can be successfully handed over to the new Cheng. Ding, so there should be no more buying and selling of land. The emperor nodded slightly and asked, what about the plan to open up wasteland? It can continue to exist, but one needs to be added. After the settlement, Yanjai Field, which has been reclaimed from wasteland, cannot be traded for 5 years. Lord Tang had no opinion on this either. The other ministers looked at each other and discussed it privately. Seeing that many people agreed, they could only agree. It's just that I feel a little uncomfortable in the end. In this way, I can only buy land privately with the people in the future, and it is impossible to buy from the court. Someone thought of something and came out, Your Majesty, the governor of Kishu has entered the capital, can His Majesty summon him? Let him rest in the inn first, I don't want to see him now. He was afraid that he would not be able to hold back his anger as soon as he saw him, so he had to wait for a while before seeing him again. What about the land that was sold by the prefect of Kishu? He was about to open his mouth when he looked up and saw the emperor's ugly face, then he silently swallowed back and stopped talking. The emperor also thought of the large piece of land that was sold by the prefect of Kishu, so he became more angry, and he directly waved most of the people to go down, leaving only Wei Ji, Lao Tang, and Lu Shangshu Yin Li. Well, there are also the 2 sweethearts and the living man sitting in the corner. After everyone had left, the emperor asked, has the matter of Zheng Erlang been cleared up? Was his injury accidental or intentional? Wei Ji closed his eyes slightly and sat as steady as Mount Tai, as if he hadn't heard the emperor's words. Lord Tang didn't speak, and the emperor's confidant, Yin Li, could only open his mouth and say, he was led to the farm, but Zhuangtu in the prison didn't speak. No matter how much interrogation was made, it was useless. The emperor frowned and asked directly, does Yin Qing think it has something to do with Zheng Dalan? Yin Li said honestly, I don't know, the ministers in solving the case are not as many as Tang adults. The emperor looked at Lord Tang, staring at him with piercing eyes. Old Master Tang said, I have checked, Zheng Dalan and Zheng Erlang are indeed at odds with each other, but not to the point where the king does not see the king. He said, Zheng Dalan is the eldest son, and it is normal for everything to be family-oriented, while Zheng Erlang has studied with Zheng Jilan since he was a child. He has a good temperament and good knowledge. If you ask Master Wei about this, you can see that although he has never been admitted to the National Children's Academy, he is capable of it is not weaker than that of Jianshen. The emperor asked blankly, so? With Zheng Dalan's cognition and upbringing, his younger brother is so good, even if his political views are discordant, he is someone who is beneficial to the family. Whether in terms of feelings or interests, the minister does not think it will be under the hands of Zheng Dalan. Lao Tang the Lord paused and said, of course, this certainty is not just speculation, there is some evidence. Old Master Tang looked at Yin Li, I have read the confessions of those people in the farmhouse. Although their words hinted at Zheng Dalan, the people they came into contact with were all servants and confidants sent by Sunji. Just acting in the name of Zheng Dalan. Judging from the evidence, this belongs to their cousins pitting each other. The emperor was silent for a while, then knocked on the table and said, then make this matter what Zheng Dalan ordered. The four ministers of the old Tang lord. Wei Ji opened his eyes and looked at the emperor with a clear gaze. The emperor said, I want to take back all the land that Kizhu prefect has sold in the past 8 years, no matter how many tricks he has done. The fourth minister was silent, and began to think about the operability of this matter. In the land sold by the prefect of Kizhu, the Zheng family occupies the majority, if the Zheng family is ahead. Several people looked at each other and acquiesced. See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2600. Bai Shan silently sat back in his seat, and together with his colleagues, minimized his presence as much as possible. The living man is used to it. He follows the emperor every day, and he has seen many conspiracies and conspiracies. A person who can be an emperor, even if his heart is not black, it can't be bright red and bright red. Always bring a little black, and this emperor will be stable. After Man Bao got the medical book he wanted, he didn't care about everything. He went to the Thai hospital every day with peace of mind, to see the concubines in the palace, and occasionally went out for an outpatient clinic. When they left the Zheng family again, the Zheng family finally remembered to give her a consultation fee. Man Bao accepted a plate of silver ingots without hesitation, and asked the 2 accompanying medical assistants to accept it, and then distributed it to each of them. Dr. Duan hesitated to accept it. It is said that Taizhou was very generous to her accompanying medical assistants. They didn't have the opportunity to be her medical assistants before, but they were really generous. Man Bao collected the remaining 3 silver ingots and said to them, there are not many cases in the palace, and the weather will be hot next month, so the Imperial Physician's Office plans to set up free clinic booths in Dongcheng and Zikan. I have to make sure to go for 3 days every 10 days, write the medical records, and I will check with Xiao Yuan when I come back. Dr. Duan froze for a moment and then responded. When Zhou Man got on his horse and left, the 2 of them looked at each other with a piece of silver in their arms. Assistant Cai touched the silver ingot in his arms and said, a few days ago, I heard a rumor that the Imperial Physician's Office was short of staff, and that a few imperial physicians had to be transferred from the imperial physician for their exclusive affairs in the past, so the imperial physician needs a new one. Promote 2 imperial physicians. Dr. Duan's eyes brightened. You mean we? He was a little skeptical, shook his head and said, Medical Assistant Lu is not only the granddaughter of Imperial Physician Lu, but also a disciple of Imperial Physician Zhou. She has already prescribed prescriptions independently. She should be promoted first, right? Cai Yazu didn't think so. The hospital is very disciplined, and Zhou Tai has good medical skills, so she has been using it all the time. Lu Yiyi is still worse than Zhou Tai. Although she can see doctors independently, she is good at acupuncture and moxibustion. In fact, there are not many prescriptions. In terms of qualifications, she is ranked below us. Dr. Duan's heart is also hot. If it is true, this is a major life event for them. The promotion from a medical assistant to an imperial physician is a big hurdle. Some people are unlucky, and they cannot be promoted to an imperial physician after working as a medical assistant for 10 years. There is almost no one who rises so fast like Zhou Man. It was Xiao Yuanzhang, who had risen so fast because of the strong support of the old imperial Dr. Tan. The two went home with money and dreams in their arms. Man Bao ran home with money in his arms, and before she got to the door, she saw Bai Shan from a distance, and immediately greeted her, quickly chasing after him, and happily said to him, I made another profit today. Money. Bai Shan smiled and asked, did the Zheng family pay for the consultation? Or did they receive another outpatient consultation? The Zheng family gave it. Man Bao handed the horse to the concierge, took Bai Shan and went back to count the silver ingots. Well, it's only 3, so I don't need to count them, but it's very fat. There are 12 taels in 1 ingot, and 3 of them are placed in the sleeve pocket. It's heavy, and it looks particularly good on the table. Bai Shan touched it and felt happy. Let's go out to eat tonight. Man Bao nodded again and again, okay, okay. So the two called for the cake, and asked Mei to tell Mrs. Lu. They changed their clothes and went out. Daji and Zibing followed behind them. When they got to the market, the two of them were not in a hurry to find something to eat, so they strolled down the street. After walking around for a long time, Bai Shan asked her, what do you want to eat? Man Bao thought about it carefully and said, wonton, I want to eat wonton. Okay, Bai Shan thought about it carefully, and finally found a delicious wonton in his mind, and took her hand to find it. When we got to the place, it was dinner time, and there were already people in front of the booth. Bai Shan looked around and saw that there was a table of guests leaving, so he pulled Man Bao and sat down. A man came out and sat beside them, shouting, we'll be there first. Bai Shan and Man Bao turned to look at her. They looked familiar. The girl who successfully grabbed the stool then raised her head and saw that Bai Shan and Zhou Man were also wide-eyed, looking at them with their mouths slightly open, and immediately got up and bowed their heads to salute. This servant has seen Lord Bai, Lord Zhou. Man Bao looked behind her and asked, you are here, where is your princess? The big palace maid smiled embarrassedly, the princess and the concubine are waiting for the roast lamb over there. They say that wontons are delicious with roast meat. Man Bao nodded, sat down on the edge of the table, and greeted Daji and Zibing, sit down and take a seat, Princess Changjio and the concubine will come to sit in a while. This is a group table, a table can seat at least 4 people, and 6 people can sit if squeezed, so it has to be occupied in advance. Zibing heard the words, and immediately stepped forward and pulled a stool to sit down, and also pulled the maid of honor. The big palace maid dropped a small piece of her butt on the stool. Although she was a little nervous, she was more excited. Lord Zhou was always lenient and should not be angry about it. Man Bao really wasn't angry, and asked her, how much has your princess eaten? I didn't eat anything, and the princess didn't go out until after the concubine's appointment. Man Bao nodded, have you eaten yet? The palace maid shook her head and smiled. Man Bao made a lot of money today. He was very generous. He could afford a bowl of wontons for 8 cents, so he waved his hand and said, I invite you to eat. How many of you are there? The big palace maid hesitated for a while before saying, there are 6 people in the entourage. Man Bao said to the shop owner, 12 bowls of wontons are all big bowls. Hey, sir, wait a moment. The store owner glanced at Man Bao and the others, and then intentionally made a table for them when greeting customers later. After waiting for a while, Chang Yu and Wei Yu squeezed in under the protection of the entourage, and they were also very pleasantly surprised to see Bai Shan and Man Bao. Wei Yu, in particular, was so overjoyed that he sat down on the stool next to Bai Shan and asked with a smile, when did you arrive? Bai Shan smiled and said, we just arrived. We didn't expect to meet you here today by such a coincidence. Chang Yu was sitting next to Man Bao, and was very happy to hear that she ordered a big bowl of wontons for them. I ate them in no time, but unfortunately there are a lot of big bowls of wontons in his house, I'm afraid I won't be able to finish them all. Man Bao said, if you can't finish it, give it to me, and I will eat it for you. Knowing that Zhou Man has a good appetite and eats a lot, Chang Yu said with a smile, that's what you said. She turned around and motioned the maid to open the barbecue they bought. She said, it will take a while for the wontons. Let's eat the barbecue first. Man Bao poked a piece for Bai Shan with a fork, and gave another piece to Daji and Western Cake. After eating one piece, he was pleasantly surprised, that's right. Chang Yu raised his head proudly and said, that's right, it's not bad compared to what we ate on the Mid-Autumn Festival that year. I ate a lot of restaurants to find this one. See you at 9. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2601. Man Bao nodded again and again and gave her a thumbs up. The wontons were quickly brought up, a big bowl, and the fat wontons filled a large bowl. Chang Yu said, his family's noodles are not as good as the one outside the imperial city, but his family's stuffing is well prepared. And a lot, the size of a wonton. Man Bao nodded again and again, and after taking a sip, she said, we passed by Xiaohu before, and found that the wontons there are eaten on a plate, so they don't call them wontons, they call them dumplings, and they eat them with vinegar. I think it's pretty good. Really, Chang Yu said, I'll try it when I look back. When the group of them finished eating the wontons, there were not many people in the booth, and everyone just sat and didn't move, watching the people coming and going on the street while sitting and talking. Wei Yu sighed, Qiutai and the people are safe. Bai Shan smiled and said, Minnan can only be Cathay Pacific. But he couldn't help but think of the arguments of the adults in the small court meeting in the past few days, as well as the emperor's various worries in private. This Qiutai civil security is still very weak, with too much time and too many hidden dangers. Bai Shan's thumb couldn't help turning on the knuckle of his index finger, and he lowered his eyes to think. When returning home, Man Bao couldn't help turning her head to look at him, and when she was about to get home, she couldn't help reaching out and holding his hand. Bai Shan looked down at her. Man Bao asked, what happened to you? Bai Shan shook his head, it's okay. After eating wontons, you are unusually silent, and you don't seem to be in a good mood. Bai Shan held her hand tightly, took a few steps forward before slowly stopping. He paused and said, Man Bao, I didn't understand until today why Brother Yang came out of the Hanlin Academy. He rejected the invitation of Zhongsha Province and the Ministry of Human Resources, and instead directly elected Lujian County, a lower county, to be the magistrate. Man Bao looked at him silently. Bai Shandao said, although Dajin is young, the accusations are not light. His Majesty is wise and generous, and willing to give advice. That's why there is now Kuatai and Minan, but there are still many, many problems under this prosperity. I admit that I have read poetry and books, including those unofficial stories you brought out. I have imagined in my heart more than once how prosperous the Jin dynasty will be in the future. Bai Shan raised his head and looked forward. In front of him was a wide avenue. Not far away is the gate of Zhou's house, and further down the tall and long wall is the Du's house. However, how confident I was in the past, how hesitant I am now, he said. In the past 3 months, the Dajin I saw was very different from the Dajin I thought before. Yingming is strong and powerful. For example, Your Majesty, wise and just like Lord Wei, and mentally tough like Lord Tang, they have to be cautious and give way before many things. He said, I used to take it for granted. Man Bao listened quietly. Bai Shan squeezed her hand tightly, then released it, but in the end he couldn't help clenching her hand tightly. He said, I have no way, at least now I really can't think of a way to solve these things perfectly. As powerful as Your Majesty, you have to tremble and make careful calculations, not to mention me waiting. What could be behind him? At any time, he will abandon his 4th or 5th class small family by clan, and then he is from a common family, and he is still walking on thin ice. Maybe add a prince. But if even the emperor has to be careful to deal with the situation, plus a prince, how much weight can it increase? So it's still a matter of method. Like the emperor, Bai Shan did not want to use violence to solve these problems. Because of violence, the people who were hurt the most in the end must be the people. Although it is said that prosperity, the people suffer, death, the people suffer. But the dead people will suffer even more. Bai Shandao, staying in the capital, I can't find a solution, I want to go out. Man Bao was surprised, are you going to release it now? Bai Shan smiled and said, I think next year's job debriefing opportunity will apply for an external assignment, and I'll start with a county parent official. Is that delegating? Man Bao tilted his head to look at him. Bai Shan sighed and said, you've also thought about it, that is, I'm demoted and released, but I still want to start as a parent official in a county. He said, I now know why Brother Yang insists on releasing local officials. There is no solution in the capital, so I can only find it locally. Man Bao probably understood what he meant, and said to him, go, I support you. Hearing this, Bai Shan exhaled, took her hand and said, if we can't put it out in one place. Man Bao said, I will miss you. Bai Shan, it seems that he was not comforted. He squeezed Man Bao's hand tightly and refused to let go. Man Bao looked left and right, and while Daji and Zibing were not paying attention, he stood up on tiptoe and kissed his face, whispering, I really miss you. Bai Shan felt as if he had eaten honey, and then a sour feeling appeared in his heart. He whispered, I will miss you too. Daji behind him, it's like they're going to separate tomorrow. The two went home holding hands. Bai Shan thought about it for a long time, and still wrote a letter to Yang He. He felt that he should tell Yang Heshu about this matter and ask him for his opinion. When the letter was delivered to Xiaoshu, the officials from the censor's desk in Kizhu and the Dali Temple of the Ministry of Punishment also returned to the capital, bringing back a large number of account books and land books, all of which were sold by the governor of Kizhu over the past 8 years. Land flow. The emperor only met Kizhu prefect once, and then did not want to see him again, but met with Zheng Patriarch twice. After the two-pronged conspiracy of the emperor and the court, the result of the deal came out quickly. The prefect of Kizhu was dismissed from office for dereliction of duty, and a large number of public land transactions sold during his tenure were cancelled. The emperor reclaimed the land at the original price regardless of the number of moves in the middle or how much the buyer paid for the last move. The cancelled transaction was determined after careful investigation and calculation by the censor desk, the Ministry of Punishment, the Dali Temple and the Ministry of Households. They can be sure that no one is innocent. This announcement will not only be posted on the city wall of Kizhu and the bulletin board outside the governor's house, but also on the bulletin board of Dali Temple in the capital, and a copy will be sent to each family. Just when the parties were out of anger and planned to violently resist the law, the Zheng family returned the land without paying a penny, and signed a confession of guilt, indicating that the land was bought by a steward in the family. When I bought it at the time, I said that the land was cheap, but I didn't know that there was another secret behind it. Zheng Shi inadvertently set a bad example for De Jin. I really felt guilty. Anyway, the 10 hectares of land was returned to the prefect of Kizhu. Then the emperor, out of favoritism, directly allocated this piece of land to the Ministry of Household, where there was a shortage of jobs and fields. Wei Ji and other ministers opened their eyes and closed their eyes as they did not know. When the other families saw it, they hesitated for a while, and then the Ministry of Punishment and the local county government came to the door with copper coins to redeem the land. Some people handed it over silently, but some people just closed the door and didn't see it, saying that they were not at home. This period is very sensitive. The spring plowing has ended, the crops in the fields have already grown, and the wheat has turned yellow. It will not take long to harvest. At this time, when the land is redeemed, even the tenants below do not agree. Even though the court has made it clear that this year's land harvest still belongs to them, and the court will only buy it first and then formally take over it after the autumn, the tenants are still encouraged to make noise. See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2602. The emperor dropped the book in his hand and snorted coldly. The others sat in their seats and pondered, and the prince suggested, "Father, it's better to let the imperial army go over there." The emperor glanced at him and said, "It's just some tenants making trouble, why do you need to ban the army?" "Prince, is it the tenant who caused the trouble?" "Obviously those local clans." But he also murmured in his heart and did not say anything. Wei Ji didn't want to use too radical means, and the speed of using the forbidden army was fast, but it was also inexorable. It is not appropriate to intensify the conflict at this time. Therefore, he suggested, "Your Majesty, why don't you choose some officials to go to Kizhu to inspect and appease?" The emperor nodded again and again, and he also meant it, so he glanced down and asked, "Do you have any good candidates?" Yin Li's eyes flashed, and he said, "Your Majesty, I think I can send Tang He over there. If there is indeed a local clan inciting the tenant farmers to make trouble, he should be able to find out, and use this to bring them to justice. Without evidence, they are not easy to do, but if there is evidence, it will be different. But it's not a big deal. It's impossible for several ministers in the DPRK to come forward, but it is possible to choose from among the young officials." Yin Li felt that Tang He was good. Elder Tang's eyebrows and eyes jumped, but he didn't speak. The emperor didn't ask his opinion, but turned his head and asked Wei Ji, "What does Wei Qing think?" Wei Ji said, "Yes." Yin Li was satisfied, so he asked, "Who does your Majesty think can take over the post of magistrate of Chang'an County?" The emperor knocked on the table and pondered. To be the magistrate of Chang'an County, first of all, his background should not be low, otherwise he would not be able to hold back the civil and military noble family. Secondly, he should not be soft-tempered, otherwise he would be a bum, and his Chang'an would not be successful. Sieve. It can't be too hard, or something will happen within a few months, and he has to wipe his ass. Who is the county magistrate for whom? The emperor pondered, and said after a long time, "Guo Yu is not bad." Not to mention Wei Ji, Lord Tang almost wanted to vomit blood. He said angrily, "Your Majesty, Guo Yu is now the magistrate of Wanyan County. Although Wanyan County is of the same grade as Chang'an County, the magistrate of Chang'an County was before the magistrate of Wanyan County. Guo Yu neglected his duty and was supposed to be released. As a result, you still want to refer people to Chang'an County. Isn't it that the left hand is changed to the right, which is more convenient? How to manage a team without knowing rewards and punishments? However, the emperor felt that since there was an inside story in the Tianzhuang fighting, it was uncontrollable, and he had no intention of calculating, so how could Guo Yu hide? So is this forgivable? Yin Li thought about it and felt that he had already promoted a subordinate, and it was nothing to promote another, so he agreed with the emperor's statement. If he really wanted to punish the magistrate of Guo, he could punish him from another place, such as punishing him for 2 years. The salary, the last time to ask for a guilt, and so on. Elder Tang thought about it and still refused to agree. There are some rules that still need to be said. If the rewards and punishments are unclear, everything can't be achieved. This cannot be an exception. This matter was temporarily put on hold. The emperor thought about it, left Bai Shan, and asked him, "What do you think of the magistrate of Guo?" As a member of Zongshu Shi, the emperor would ask questions from time to time. This is a normal operation, so Bai Shan also replied normally, "I think it's good." After thinking about it, he said, "Although there must be clear rewards and punishments, it is not a bad idea to occasionally hire out of exception." The magistrate Guo was dereliction of duty, but he was also somewhat innocent. The emperor nodded in agreement, and asked with a smile, "In this way, there is a magistrate of Chang'an County, but there is no magistrate of Wanyan County. Who do you think is suitable?" Bai Shan thought about it seriously and shook his head, "I know only a limited number of people. Your Majesty may ask Lord Wei and others." "I do have a choice," he smiled at Bai Shan and said, "I think you are good." Bai Shan was surprised for a moment, then immediately resigned, "Your Majesty, this minister is inappropriate." The emperor asked him, "Why are you inappropriate?" Bai Shandao, Wanyan County, like Chang'an County, is the capital of Guo County, which is very important. Every county magistrate has experience in local management. Inexperienced, this minister came to manage Wanyan County. I am afraid that I will live up to His Majesty's high hopes." The emperor frowned in thought. Seeing this, Bai Shan took the opportunity to say, "Your Majesty, this minister wants to choose an outsider." The emperor's brows furrowed even tighter. "How long has it been since you were promoted to Zongshu Shiran? Why did you want to go out?" "I want to learn how to manage local affairs," Bai Shan said. "After entering the Zongshu province, what I learned from Fangzishu is still too superficial. When your Majesty asks you about government affairs, the minister is always trembling, lest he will not be able to answer." He said, "It's not that the subject has not read enough books, but that the subject's knowledge is not enough, and these knowledge cannot be learned from books, not even in the Hanlin Academy and the Zongshu school." The emperor lowered his eyes and pondered, then raised his eyes to stare at him, and asked after a while, "Where do you want to go out?" Bai Shan was also polite and said, "I want to go to a Zhongxian or Xiaxian county, but it's not Kuoxian anyway." The emperor understood after a moment's thought. He couldn't help laughing. He pointed his finger at him and said, "You're welcome, and you know how to avoid others." Bai Shan lowered his head and stared at his toes. The emperor got up, turned around in place for 2 times, and said, "All right, but there is no suitable position at this time. You should continue to stay in Zongshu province." Bai Shan bowed his head in response, but was very excited. He knew that the emperor had promised him, and he would let him go out only when he had a suitable position. Bai Shan resigned respectfully. Kijulang honestly wrote it down, but he felt a little sad in his heart. He finally got acquainted with a person. Someone would help him polish his ink when he was busy, but now this person is going to fly away. I don't know when he will be able to rise 1 liter. He will no longer be a jubilee squatting in the corner, but a historian who will look through the daily records and revise histories in the high room. The emperor began to find out the roster he remembered, and began to count with a pen who could be the magistrate of Wanyan County and Chang'an County. Gu Zhong smiled and refilled him a cup of tea. Your Majesty might as well rest your eyes. The Emperor put down the roster with a sigh. There are still a few people available. Then your Majesty agreed to let Lord Bai go out. Gu Zhong smiled. I see that Lord Bai is smart. Even if I have no experience now, I will learn it for a while after taking office. The Emperor shook his head and said, he has a longer way to go, so I can't stop him. The Emperor thought of something, put down his pen and said with a smile, who wasn't crazy when he was young? This child is not only crazy, he is also crazy with self-knowledge. I have seen many children over the years, and Yang Heshu is the only one with him. Gu Zhong was surprised. See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2603. The Emperor said, there is a lot of knowledge in this place. If he wants to go further, he must know how to manage ordinary people, how to manage aristocratic families, and how to manage local wealthy families. In the place where he is the governor of the governor, he can integrate and fight against these people completely by his own strength and wisdom, so that the connections and prestige that he has cultivated completely belong to him. The Emperor said, look at Yang Heshu, how is his reputation in Xiaoshu now, and how is his reputation in the court? Although he is far away from the capital and the center of power, in the hearts of the ministers, his weight is only a lot more than that of Tang He, who came out of the same department. The Emperor put his hands behind his back and clenched his fists slightly. Yang and the book were too involved, and he didn't know what to do in the future, but although Bai Shan came from a noble family, he had always grown up far away from his own family. In the future, when the prince ascended the throne, he might be the purest one. The Emperor thought to himself, he does not speak crookedly. In the evening of the same day, the Emperor specially reserved the prince to have dinner together, and the father and son ate at the dining table. The Emperor mentioned this matter and said to the prince, Bai Shan is still young and still has youthful enthusiasm, where do you think he is going? Better. The prince said, since he doesn't pick it himself, let's see where the next vacancy is and send it to him directly. Hearing the words, the Emperor glanced at him and said, it's not like this is how you raise people. The queen smiled and added a bowl of rice to them, and said, let's talk after eating. Bai Shan, on the other hand, went out of the palace after finishing his work, but he was stopped by a carriage before he left the imperial city. The magistrate Guo opened the curtain and said with a smile, Master Bai, the sky is good today, why don't we use it together? A meal. Bai Shanliu understood after a little thought, so he smiled and nodded. When the magistrate Guo saw it, he took the initiative to lift the curtain of the car and invite Bai Shan to enter. Bai Shan handed the horse over to the entourage of the magistrate Guo, and stepped on the carriage himself. The magistrate Guo smiled and asked, where do you want to eat, Lord Bai? Bai Shan smiled and said, wait. County Magistrate Guo, how long does it take to find a place to eat? Zhuangyuan building, Jifa building, just pick one, he will definitely not blink. It's just that Bai Shan took a long time to think, and he didn't even think about the carriage after passing a square, and then the carriage was stopped. County Magistrate Guo heard a familiar voice in the car and said, why is Lord Bai's horse here with you? County Magistrate. He raised his head and looked at Bai Shan quietly. Bai Shan smiled at him, opened the curtain and said, I'm here. Man Bao dismounted, stepped forward curiously, looked at the magistrate Guo in the car, and asked inexplicably, how did you get together? The county magistrate Guo has returned to normal, and said with a smile on his face, the sky is good today, and I met Lord Bai by chance, so I want to invite Lord Bai to have a drink. Man Baoxin has a ghost. Don't the two of them have a few days every month to meet by chance? Why hasn't he invited her? The magistrate Guo smiled and said, it's such a coincidence that I met Lord Zhou today. This is fate. Lord Zhou, let's go for a drink together. Man Bao glanced at Bai Shan, who nodded slightly to her. So Manbao handed over his horse to Guo County Magistrate's entourage, and soon there was one more person in the car. Bai Shan picked up the teapot in the car, poured her a cup of tea, and asked, "Are you alone?" "No, there are 2 medical assistants, but I let them go back first." Bai Shan Shun asked, "How's Mr. Zheng's injury?" "The hair is no longer shaved, it can be grown long. The trauma has healed, but the blood inside has not completely dissipated. There are still some problems with speaking at this moment." The magistrate Guo also became serious and asked, "Master Zhou thinks he may take the Jinshi exam this year." Manbao thought for a while and said, "I'll know when I come tomorrow to give him a brain-boosting acupuncture." Being an official of the same dynasty and having been in front and back for many years, the magistrate Guo still knew Zhou Man's level, so he nodded slightly. County Magistrate Guo glanced at Bai Shan and smiled slightly, "Master Bai, where do you want to eat?" Bai Shan smiled and said, "Since it's Mr. Guo's treat, it's naturally Mr. Guo who chooses, and we can do whatever we want." The magistrate Guo did not hesitate, and after pondering for a moment, he said, "Go to Jifukulo, I heard that there are fresh lotus seeds to eat in Jifukulo now. Because of the heat in summer, we have specially developed a few dishes to cool off the heat. Let's try it." "Try it?" Manbao nodded again and again, "It's a little hot. My sister-in-law said that the store has not made steamed pork very often since the beginning of the year, but the newly made cold noodles are very popular." Bai Shan nodded and asked the magistrate Guo, "Does Jifalu have cold noodles?" County Magistrate Guo, "Yes." When the 3 arrived at Jifa building, the entourage brought their own carriages and horses to resettlement. The guys recognized the magistrate Guo, as well as Bai Shan and Zhou Man, and immediately stepped forward to greet them. The magistrate Guo asked for a private room, and the 3 of them sat at a spacious table and ordered food. The county magistrate Guo, who is not short of money, is very generous. He not only ordered 2 signature dishes, but also ordered a lot of dishes suitable for summer. Da Fang was embarrassed to add more to Bai Shan and Man Bao, so he said to the guy who reported the name of the dish, "We don't have anything to add." The magistrate Guo smiled and said, "Master Bai and Master Zhou, please don't be polite." Bai Shan smiled and said, "It's not that you're polite, but that Mr. Guo ordered enough, any more is extravagant." The county magistrate Guo smiled when he heard the words, "This statement is very true. As expected of the person beside your majesty, I will punish myself for a cup." Manbao has already started writing and repairing books today. She uses her brain too much. She is a little hungry at this time, so she doesn't want to use her brain. Seeing that there are beans and cakes on the table, she doesn't really want to eat cakes to fill her stomach, so she stir-fries with chopsticks. Beans to eat? As for why the magistrate Guo invited the couple, oh no, it was Bai Shan to eat, so let Bai Shan deal with it completely. She concentrated on eating. The county magistrate Guo glanced at her at first, but seeing that she was so focused on eating, he also forgot her and focused on talking to Bai Shan. By the way, why did he invite Bai Shan to dinner? Of course we have to wait until the food is ready. When the dishes were served, Man Bao became more attentive to his food, and the magistrate Guo mentioned the vacancies in Chang'an and Wanyan counties while he was eating. He is still the magistrate of Wanyan County, but it is already foreseeable that he will leave office, but no one thought that the magistrate of Chang'an County would leave office earlier than him. Bai Shan thought about it, it was not a secret, and he had written down the official document of Tang magistrate's promotion in the afternoon and sent it to the province for review. Although he did not know whether it was reviewed or not, Mr. Wei was also present at the time, and he did not express any objection on the spot. Then this matter is 99%, and it is only a matter of time before it is reviewed. Even Mr. Guo, who was not present, knew it, and there were quite a few people who knew it, so he said, Master Tang's promotion to the Shaiyan of Jingzhou Prefecture has already been completed, but the successor of Chang'an County has not yet been elected. See you at 9. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2604. Mr. Guo was ordered by Yin Li to come to Baishan. I heard that the emperor finally left him to speak. It seems that he intended Baishan to take over as the magistrate of Wanyan County. County Magistrate Guo was still a little excited, but he was very cautious, because there was another possibility that the post of Magistrate of Wanyan County and the post of Magistrate of Chang'an County were actually not different, but the dignitaries and magistrates under the jurisdiction of Chang'an County. There are more families. The biggest dignitary among them is a guy named Emperor. Ahem, so since the Emperor thinks that Baishan can take over Wanyan County, if he changes his thinking a little, does the Emperor think that Baishan can also take over Chang'an County directly? Then, should he, the Wanyan County magistrate, release it or release it? Baishan seemed to know what he was thinking, and smiled slightly. I'm still working in the Zhongsha province. If there is an opportunity to be released in the future, I will also ask Mr. Guo's experience in governing the county. The magistrate of Guo understood as soon as he heard it. He would not take over Wanyan County, let alone Chang'an County, but went to the outside world. He raised his eyebrows. It was really strange. Why do both of them like to run out? The county magistrate Guo stiffened slightly and lowered his head to think. In fact, if you think about it seriously, Tang He and Yang Heshu are two subjects behind him, and he is their senior. But now, one or two of them have surpassed him. However, he always thought that they were lucky. After all, they happened to meet the rebellious vassal king of Yazhu King. Although they had made great achievements, they were also very dangerous. But now it seems that there is also a secret in this selected place. So he got serious and asked, where does Master Bai want to put it outside? Bai Shan shook his head, go wherever there is a vacancy. The magistrate of Guo looked at him suspiciously. The capital Guo County is the largest, most prosperous, and the highest official county in the world. I don't know how many magistrates want to be magistrates of these two counties. He really couldn't understand why Bai Shan refused. Instead, the outer counties were chosen. Man Bao had eaten and drank enough, and only then did he have time to pay attention to the two of them. Seeing that they couldn't talk about the key for a long time, they were still playing Ji Feng, thinking that she and the county magistrate Guo also had a friendship for many years. She more than once he was poked by the magistrate Guo, and this time he ate a big meal, so he said directly, the magistrate Guo wants to ask His Majesty's attitude towards magistrate Guo taking over as Chang'an County, right? County magistrate Guo wanted to pull his emotions and bring it up further, but was pierced by Zhou Man, and he almost sprayed the tea. Man Bao and Bai Shan said, tell him, I have a good relationship with the magistrate Guo, and we are good friends. The county magistrate Guo raised a smile on his face and said, Master Zhou is very polite. I have been officials in the same dynasty for many years. Last time, Master Zhou invited me to drink tea. Man Bao just remembered and said cheerfully, you're welcome, you're welcome. Bai Shan smiled and said, Your Majesty is intentional, but there are adults who think this is illegal. As for why it is not in compliance, everyone knows without specifying it. Today is an emperor who is very good at remonstrance. If there is a strong objection from the ministers, then most of the things will not be possible. The magistrate Guo frowned. Bai Shan pointedly said, but there are adults who think it can be hired exceptionally, and even Lord Wei has not spoken out against it. The county magistrate Guo's eyes brightened, and he had an idea in his heart. He picked up the wine glass and said with a smile, thank you, Lord Bai, for your suggestion. Bai Shan raised his glass with a smile and said, Master Guo is very polite, I am Sharan, and I will not go to the main hall. In the future, my wife will ask Master Guo to take care of me in the main hall. The county magistrate Guo smiled and said, Master Bai is polite, and Master Zhou and I will take care of each other. The procedure for Master Tang's promotion was carried out very quickly. The next day, the provincial government approved it and sent it to the Ministry of Personnel. Therefore, Master Tang was officially promoted to Shaiyin of Jingzhou Prefecture. Because the magistrate of Chang'an County was not found for a while, he still handled the affairs. It's just that he still has a county magistrate available under him, and he only needs to deal with some urgent matters. But Yin Li went to find someone and said, there is a lot of commotion in Qizhou, and the new governor is still on his way back to Beijing. It is estimated that it will take 7 or 8 days to arrive, and he will have to report for another 3 or 4 days in the capital, which will be delayed. The longer it goes, the worse the situation there. He said, Your Majesty and the adults in the DPRK mean that you should bring someone over to inspect immediately and handle this matter well. Master Tang asked secretly, do you want to calm down the waves, or to root out the troublemakers, or not to hurt people's lives, but to suppress and subdue those who are dissent? Yin Li glanced at him and said, you have quite a lot of ideas. You can make up your own mind and do it with the camera. Master Tang, he doesn't like this answer very much. You can tell me directly what purpose you want to achieve. Yin Li turned around and left, saying, I'm going on a tour. If nothing happens, think about who you want to bring. If you're not sure, ask your father for advice. Master Tang quietly curled his lips. He knew that it was definitely not the second type. Otherwise, there was no need to promote him at all. Just let his boss go there. Master Yin went out to operate. Do you still need him to bring someone over? Old Master Tang is very serious, but he is very kind to his son, he does not hide it, and directly said, it is naturally good to be able to eliminate the disaster. Now it is the duckweed-like tenant farmers who are making noise, and they are almost all attached to these lands. Therefore, it is most likely to be provoked by others. Although you can use your strength to beat cattle to make the people behind them fear and give in, but people's emotions are difficult to control. Ordinary people. So for the sake of safety, you should try to eliminate it as much as possible. If you can get evidence that they instigated the tenant farmers to cause trouble, don't rush to expose it in Qizhou, or make plans after returning to Beijing, or wait for the next Qizhou governor to take office. Do it later. Old Master Tang paused and said, this time, the governor of Qizhou was transferred back from the Yunzhou area. The people there are fierce. This governor can lead troops to the grasslands and fight against horse thieves, so as long as there is evidence, don't worry that he will ignore it. Old Master Tang said, what you have to do is to deal with the troubled tenants and buy back the land as it is. Master Tang understood. Old Master Tang asked with a smile, have you decided who you want to take? Master Tang said, my son is thinking. He glanced at his father, leaned over and asked in a low voice, Father, you said that your Majesty and I want his Zongshisharan, will he give it? Lord Tang looked down at him, paused and asked, do you want Bai Shan? Master Tang nodded. Old Master Tang frowned, he has no experience as a local official, what's the benefit of bringing him? Master Tang smiled and said, I know my father's concerns, but Bai Shan is not an ordinary son of a noble family. He grew up in the fields. He is not only familiar with farming, but also gets along well with farmers and tenants. Although he has never been a local official, but dealing with ordinary people is not worse than those of us who have been local officials, and, like Changbo, he is very popular with ordinary people, and their words are generally more convincing. Old Master Tang looked at his son's bronzed face and sturdy edges and corners, and then thought of Bai Shan, who was as white as frost and as warm as jade, and nodded slightly. Although Bai Shan was not as handsome as Yang and Shu, he was indeed very friendly. The son looked stronger than his son. See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2605. Lord Tang thought for a while, then nodded and said, Your Majesty values Bai Shan very much. This is an opportunity for experience, and Your Majesty should not object. Previously, the Emperor also intended to let Bai Shan take over the post of magistrate of Wanyan County. If the Emperor really planned to reuse Bai Shan, this would be a good opportunity. So Tang He and the Emperor wanted someone. Although the Emperor had given up his plan to let Bai Shan take over Wanyan County, he still let Bai Shan go with Tang He. This time is indeed a good experience opportunity. Bai Shan also knew, excitedly ran home and told Man Bao, This is the first time I have contacted the tenant farmers as an official. Man Bao asked, Is it dangerous? Bai Shan nodded, It's still a little dangerous. I heard that some tenant farmers ruined their young plants in a rage because they listened to rumors. Man Bao frowned, Destroying young crops? This is a big sin. Bai Shan nodded, Kizhu has arrested a group of people, so the tenant farmers are even more angry. In order not to worsen the relationship between the two sides, Brother Tang decided to set off tomorrow. So fast. Yeah, Bai Shan smiled as he held her hand, but don't worry, it looks a little dangerous, but I'll be fine. He smiled and said, I made an agreement with Swexian Tang. When we arrive in Kizhu, we will be gentle. If it doesn't work, he will sing white face, and I will sing red face. We will stabilize the situation first. Man Bao looked at him suspiciously, You and Brother Tang have a good relationship. It is known to the civil and military people of the whole dynasty. Can they believe that you have different opinions? Bai Shan smiled and said, We went to Kizhu to face the civil and military affairs of the Manchu dynasty. Those people are afraid that they don't know who I am and Tang Swexian. Man Bao nodded, Take Daji and let him protect you. This was Bai Shan's first business trip, and Man Bao was quite reluctant. She poked his palm and said, Be careful, don't conflict with them, run away if you can't. Bai Shan nodded in understanding. Man Bao got up and said, I'll pack your luggage for you. Bai Shan rolled up his sleeves and said, I'm with you. The two put their clothes, shoes, and socks into the boxes and put them in different categories. The big girl next to Mrs. Lu came over with a bunch of shoes and socks. Young master, young madam, the old lady said that I'm afraid I can't be here in Kizhu. The prefect's mansion and the county government are sitting in peace, so I'll bring you some shoes and socks. Bai Shan and Man Bao turned their heads and glanced at the shoes and socks that accounted for 1/3 of the box, and said in unison, I brought enough. Bai Shandao, I have only brought 3 sets of clothes, all of them are light, the most are these shoes and socks, and I can't wear any more. The eldest girl smiled, Master, don't let the old lady worry, you should take it with you. There is still room for this box, you can squeeze it in by squeezing it. The two of them had no choice, so they could only squeeze inside, and then Man Bao went to the pharmacy in the west wing to get a lot of bottles and jars, and she put them in his purse and stuffed them between the gaps in the box. Why don't you bring an extra suitcase? Forget it, we are going on a business trip this time. Apart from me and senior brother Tang, there are also 2 censors from the censor's desk. It's not good to bring too many things. After all, it's not like they went to the western regions before, they can bring as much as they want. This time on a business trip, if they bring too many things and people, they will be too spoiled. Man Bao had no choice but to work hard with him to pack all kinds of medicine bottles and medicine bags and stuff them into boxes. Man Bao said, This one is Huaxiang pill, it's a recipe I specially found and made by myself, it can treat summer heat syndrome. Now the weather is getting sultry, and it occasionally rains. This time I go to Kizhu, you must be sure it has to run in the fields, so it can be used for vomiting, diarrhea, fever and chills. This one is to treat fever and cough caused by exogenous wind evil. The Dragon Boat Festival is approaching, and the wind outside is full of evil spirits, so you have to be careful. This is smeared after being bitten by mosquitoes. These mosquitoes are also a serious harm, so I also gave you a mosquito-repelling medicine bag, which is wrapped in oil paper and packed in a box. When you want to use it, take one packet every day and put it in your purse. Bring it in. Bai Shan nodded again and again. Seeing her chattering, he bent down and blocked her mouth. After a while, he let go. He whispered, I know that you have your name written on these medicine bottles, and this is not the first time for me. See, I can tell. He hugged her and kissed her forehead, softly said, Don't worry, Kishu is not very far from the capital, and it can be reached in a day with a quick horse and whip. If I really miss you, I can come back secretly. Look at you. Manbao blushed and threatened him in a low voice, Don't come back, if you get caught, you will run away. I won't save you then. Bai Shan chuckled lightly and said, If you don't save me, there will be no husband in the future. Manbao reached out and held his face, kissed him on the cheek, and whispered, You can come back safely. Bai Shan nodded fiercely. Bai Shan only brought Daji and 2 guards, a box and a burden, thinking that it was enough. As a result, after a round at the gate of the city, he saw that Master Tang only brought a Mingli and 2 big burdens. A censor is also, in the end, the simplified Bai Shan brings the most things and people. He silently dismounted from the horse and saluted Tang He. Tang He nodded and said, Since everyone has arrived, let's go. We have a carriage and we may not be able to reach Kishu until tomorrow, but we must enter the city earlier. The other 3 responded and mounted their horses one after another. Bai Shan ran beside Tang He, turned his head and asked, Tang Xuexiang only brought so many things. Tang He said indifferently, It's inconvenient to go out, just mess around with it. It's better to go out less often. The censor on the other side smiled and said, Master Bai is a young master who has little experience and is a pampered son. Bai Shan, is he still pampered? He considers himself to be the least pampered son of the aristocratic family, okay. Who rolled up his trouser legs and planted seeds when he was 7 or 8 years old. Then Bai Shan, who traveled all the way, found that he seemed to be really spoiled. The 2 imperial censors, although one was from a poor family, but the same wealthy family, the other was from an aristocratic family like him. As a result, they raced all the way without batting an eye. They rested in the middle of the road and ate the dry food from the bag. I drank it from the cold boiled water in the bamboo tube, and it didn't take any heat, let alone soak the pancakes to eat. When they arrived in Kishu, they not only had to deal with officials and local clans in Kishu, but also had to go down to the fields to meet angry tenant farmers. They slept in the field when it was late at night. They didn't even have tents, just spread a layer of hay. Lie down. The reason why it was so hard was not because of how hard and simple they were, but because the tenants they met today were too angry. They didn't listen to their explanations and didn't say anything. They even waved their hose to hoe their heads. They had no choice but to withdraw from the village. It was too late to return to the city, so he stayed in the field outside. See you at 6 p.m.